So Attorney General Pam Bondi just dropped some major news about the Minnesota fraud scandal, and I need to talk about this because the reaction has been absolutely explosive. Let me tell you what's going on. Pam Bondi tweeted out that the Department of Justice has charged 98 individuals in connection with the Minnesota fraud investigation. And here's the detail that's getting everyone's attention. She said 85 of those charged are of Somali descent, and more than 60 have already been found guilty in court. She also said, and I quote, "We have more prosecutions coming, buckle up lawmakers." Now on the surface, this sounds like exactly what people have been demanding, right? Accountability, prosecutions, justice. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly really frustrating. There are a lot of people saying, wait a minute, where are the handcuffs? Where are the perp walks? Where are the arrests that we're actually seeing? And Roger Stone weighs in on this, responding to Kari Lake. And let me tell you, he does not hold back. I found Roger Stone's tweet, and this is exactly what's on everyone's mind. He says, and I'm reading this directly, "There's not a damn person in handcuffs. They dragged Roger Stone out of his house. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They attacked President Trump. When are we going to see some fucking handcuffs on some fucking criminals in this country? The American people have had it." And you've got to see what Kari Lake said that prompted this response. Let me show you this clip from Newsmax.
There's not a damn person in handcuffs. Yet they dragged Roger Stone out of his house. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They attacked President Trump. When are we going to see some effing handcuffs on some effing criminals in this country? The American people have had it up to here. And we want some people locked up, prosecuted, behind bars for the rest of their lives. We're sick and tired of it.
And you know what? I think he's touching on something that a lot of Americans are feeling right now. There's this perception, whether it's fair or not, that there's a two-tiered justice system. That if you're a Trump supporter, the FBI shows up at your house at 6 a.m. with CNN cameras in tow, full tactical gear, guns drawn. But if you're part of a massive fraud scheme that's stolen potentially billions in taxpayer money, what happens? Let me be clear about what Roger Stone is referencing here. Back in January 2019, I found that the FBI raided Roger Stone's home in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They showed up with 29 agents, tactical gear, boats in the water behind his house, helicopters overhead. And this was for process crimes related to the Mueller investigation. Not murder, not violence, process crimes. And CNN was there to film it. How did CNN know to be there at 6 a.m. for a pre-dawn raid? That's a question that's never been adequately answered. So when people like Roger Stone and Kari Lake are asking where are the handcuffs, they're saying we saw the full force of federal law enforcement used against political opponents of the establishment. We saw it with Roger Stone. We saw it with the Mar-a-Lago raid. We saw it with the January 6th defendants who are still sitting in prison. But now we have what federal prosecutors are saying could be up to $9 billion in fraud in Minnesota. $9 billion. And the question is, are we seeing the same level of urgency? Are we seeing the same aggressive enforcement? I found this really disturbing story. There was a woman named Fozia Ali who was charged with bilking the state out of $4 million in daycare fraud. Prosecutors requested her bail be set at $1 million because they feared she was a flight risk. The judge lowered it to $200,000. She claimed that was all she could afford, and said she had no plans of going anywhere because she's the mother of 6 children. And then guess what happened? At the start of her trial, she didn't show up. She fled. She never stood trial. So where is she now? Nobody knows. Because I found that many of these fraud defendants are immigrants. Some here legally, some potentially not. So when they're convicted, what happens? Are they serving time and then getting deported? Are they just getting deported without serving time? Are they fleeing before trial like Fozia Ali did? These are the questions people want answered. Because when Roger Stone says there's not a damn person in handcuffs, what he's really saying is where's the accountability? Where's the justice that the American people can actually see? And I think he has a point. If you're going to raid Mar-a-Lago over classified documents, if you're going to send 29 agents to Roger Stone's house for process crimes, if you're going to keep January 6th protesters in solitary confinement for trespassing, then you better show that same level of enforcement when it comes to people who steal billions of dollars from taxpayers. Now, to be fair to Pam Bondi and the Trump administration, They're ramping up enforcement right now. I found that DHS launched this massive operation in Minnesota literally yesterday. They're investigating over 30 sites. They're going door to door. Kash Patel says more arrests are coming. And Bondi's tweet says, "Buckle up, lawmakers, more prosecutions are coming." So it sounds like the Trump administration is taking this seriously and is going to go after everyone involved. But the concern is it too little too late? This fraud has been happening for years. Billions have already been stolen. Some of the perpetrators have already fled the country. How much of that money are we actually going to recover? I found that in the Feeding Our Future case alone, defendants spent the stolen money on lakefront property, luxury cars, jewelry, first-class plane tickets, a rented private villa in the Maldives. That money is gone. The taxpayers aren't getting that back. So yeah, prosecute them. Send them to prison. But that doesn't undo the damage. That doesn't bring back the billions that were stolen. That doesn't help the vulnerable children who should have been fed but weren't because the money meant for them went to fraudsters instead. And that's why people are so angry. That's why Kari Lake is cursing on Newsmax. That's why Roger Stone is demanding to see handcuffs. Because the scale of this fraud is absolutely staggering, and it feels like the response has been inadequate. Tim Walz is still governor. He hasn't resigned. He hasn't been held accountable. No one in his administration has lost their job. The state commissioners who oversaw these programs and failed to stop the fraud, they're all still employed. How is that acceptable? How does a governor preside over potentially $9 billion in fraud and face zero consequences? How does that work? I found that 5 Republican state legislators have called for Walz to resign. But it's not going to happen. He's going to stay in office. He's going to run for re-election. And unless the voters of Minnesota throw him out, he's going to keep his job despite this massive failure. That's the kind of thing that makes people lose faith in the system. When there are no consequences for failure. When there are no consequences for allowing billions in fraud to occur on your watch. Let me wrap this up. Pam Bondi says 98 charged, 85 of Somali descent, more than 60 convicted, more prosecutions coming. That's good. I'm glad the Trump administration is taking this seriously. I'm glad they're going after the criminals. But people like Kari Lake and Roger Stone are asking the right questions. Where are the handcuffs? Where are the perp walks? Where's the accountability that the American people can actually see? Because right now, it feels like there's one standard for Trump supporters and another standard for everyone else. And until that changes, until people see equal justice under the law, the frustration is going to continue. The anger is going to continue. And honestly, it should continue. Because the American people deserve better. They deserve a justice system that treats everyone equally, whether you're a political operative or a daycare fraud criminal. That's all I've got for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with Kari Lake and Roger Stone? Do you think the enforcement has been inadequate? Or do you think Bondi and the Trump administration are doing enough? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.